They jerked left or right between stepping slowly but inevitably towards us. About half a dozen tall, weird, white-clad figures ripped from someone else's nightmare. We didn't remember designing them, and plopped down in our childhood haunted house made real. The entities were coming for us. And we hadn't even gotten much of a start on the first puzzle. I felt betrayed by the house. Betrayed by the rules. We hadn't broken any, at least I didn't think we had. While the rest of us were fumbling with the stone blocks, making half-formed guesses about which blocks to put back into the fireplace mantle. Jennifer started to pull one out. We stopped what we were doing and gaped. It was almost right, she said as she removed the fifth block. The circle and globe clues tried to throw me off, but then I thought about how they were broken, and how one of my teachers used to say spirals were like broken circles. That teacher wasn't right. Certain spirals are perfect. I used to draw spirals all the time with my compass. I'd put them on my parents' old envelopes, anything I could get my hands on, even the pages of Greg's sketchbooks. They appear in nature, in things like seashells and flowers, in the best kind of spiral, the most perfect kind. It's one of the reasons I got interested in science early on. The perfect spiral is golden, called the golden spiral when someone tries to reproduce it. Golden like a treasure. In mathematics, this kind of spiral can be represented in something called the Fibonacci sequence. The first, second, third, 8th, 13th, and now 5th, that was the missing number, makes up the beginning of the sequence, not counting 0 and the repeated numbers. As she was talking, something in the fireplace clicked. Then there was a stony sliding sound. The bottom of the firebox fell out. And the treasured gold coins, rubies, topazes, everything plummeted. Its echoing clatter rose up a moment later. She dropped the fifth block of stone on the floor, where the others had been deposited by us. Great, I said, but they're still coming. The entity nearest me was about 9 feet away by now. It continued walking very slowly in its almost rhythmic stride, broken by the jerk to the left or right. And because it was this close, and even though it was still blurred by the haze that followed them like their own private atmosphere, I could tell that its legs were not like ours. They were angled in, and then angled sharply out. Maybe that's why it walked the funny way it did. The rest of its body was very large and equally strange in arrangement. Over its body were thick, fuzzy, somewhere between wool and fur, garments of white, almost like robes, with extra colors I couldn't pin down. As for its face or head that I started to lose hope was just elaborately masked. It was like its own organism. As it got closer to me, that face thing stood up, actually stood up, from a curled position. Other than 2 round eyes with no orifices, it was like the face thing had been sleeping on the mound of body we might normally call a neck. As it got up, it revealed its own brighter torso and face. The round eyes never shifted while the rest of it did. The face thing's lower legs were fused to the larger body. Layers of sickly, but tightly packed muscles were on the face thing. Fingers. When the arms on the face thing raised and turned over, I saw rows of jagged teeth on them. The larger limbs of its larger body began to raise themselves too as it got even closer to me. Hands, but whiter and rounder, open with more than 5. Like it was 2 organisms. Maybe more beneath the robes. No, Greg shouted. I turned and beheld Greg speed walking into Patrick. Patrick had a handgun, probably, I thought, what he had been gripping in his pocket, and it was aimed at one of the entities. The gun fired. But it missed its mark as Greg pushed Patrick over. When Greg got back up, he had the weapon, and the already queasy feeling in my stomach intensified. The gun fired. But it missed its mark as Greg pushed Patrick over. When Greg got back up, he had the weapon, and the already queasy feeling in my stomach intensified. Then Greg walked more quickly than I'd thought him capable of, twisting between 2 entities, the gun in one hand and his newer sketchbook in the other, just missing getting snagged by a larger strange arm, and continued on towards the back of the room. The entities were on his tail. They had turned from us. They picked up their pace as they pursued Greg. But they weren't running like the rules warned they would if we did. Not yet. It seemed speed walking was fair game. Greg opened the door to the hallway leading back to the foyer and stairs. I'll toss it in the cubby hole, Greg yelled as he walked rapidly out of the room. If that doesn't do it, and I don't make it, tell my wife and my daughter. At that moment he had decided to slam the door behind him. Did the entities open the door like you or I would? If so, I did not hear or see it. I saw the haze around them thicken, blurring to the point that they were fully obscured. Then they were gone. It wasn't electronic, Patrick growled beside me. The gun? It's mechanical, not electronic. No violation of rule number 3. You didn't have a laser, flashlight, or anything on it, did you? I said. No. It's a standard semi-automatic handgun with no extra bells or whistles. How about a GPS tracker? Jennifer said. Ah, Patrick said. I could see his jaw grinding back and forth. Ah, yeah. I forgot I had one attached. Somebody at the store recommended it. Clark yammered on and on about rigging it up for me, and I was just trying to get out of there. That thing is inconspicuous. I guess that's the point, so a would-be thief doesn't see it. He told us he was sorry, that he brought that gun to protect us, that he didn't know why Greg would not let him shoot one of those entities. What if, I said, and bear with me here, what if those entities are just people in costumes with animatronics or puppetry? Expensive. Sure. And surrounded by some impressive smoke and mirror stuff. And imagine, if you would, that Greg is the one who set it up, like maybe he's the one with some rich connections, and doesn't want us to kill an actual person, while they're attempting nothing more than a prank. Not long ago, Patrick said, you all were accusing me of arranging this. Which is crazy. We did this together. Yes, it doesn't matter, I said. We gotta leave. Things are way out of hand. We can't leave without trying, Jennifer said to me. You know that. Think about a treasure that's worth risking our lives for. She was right. She was absolutely right. 5 floors. 5 of us. Not 4. 5. We had not talked about Sally aloud since we'd gotten here, but she was on our minds. The only reason I haven't mentioned her yet is because I was waiting for the right moment. It had been Sally's idea to design this haunted house when we were young. I mentioned earlier that our main goal in making up this place and its rules when we were kids was to design a scary, dangerous house. And that it was due to our being cooped up apartment brats wanting to conjure up a house all our own. That was how it started. But then somewhere along the way our friend Sally, who had helped us start designing the house, disappeared. Some had said she'd been abducted. Others that she had wandered out of the apartment complex and gotten lost. There were extensive searches. There were countless vigils. We believed then, because of something we had done, that it was the house that had taken her. So as kids we finished planning out the house and its rules after she was gone. Because we wanted her back. We never openly said aloud that we thought finishing this idea that had started with her would bring her back. But it was there with us and in the place that Sally used to sit. When she didn't come back, there was unspoken guilt. We tried again and again to fix the house and its rules. We made changes. We did everything short of building the house ourselves, which we might have done, if we'd only had the resources. But we were kids. We gave up. Because we didn't think there was anything else we could do. Jennifer still calls Sally's parents every year. I don't think I ever did. When someone goes away, and you can't wrap your head around it, eventually you might start to forget. Not forget them, but forget their reality. You live with the memory of them like it's a story your parents used to read to you before bed. Sally's the treasure in the attic, I said. Yeah, Jennifer said, if this isn't fake. So we should go through with it either way. That's what Sally would have wanted, I said. She loved this stuff. Probably more than Greg and the rest of us. Patrick was turned away, facing one of the boarded-up windows. I wanted to turn him around and ask him, point blank, which treasure he would prefer, our lost friend, or one like the gold and jewels that had just been under our noses. I also didn't want to ask him. Not long after that, Greg returned to the living room. He made some joke about how folks like to jazz up their guns with electronics nowadays. He banked on that as soon he'd seen Patrick pull his weapon like the po-po on a perp. He clapped a hand on Jennifer's back and congratulated her on solving the puzzle, his other hand still gripping his sketchbook, despite looking a little green in the face. He seemed alright, like those entities hadn't gotten their weird little, and weird big, hands on him, while he had been depositing Patrick's gun in the cubbyhole near the entrance. He asked us why we were so downtrodden after solving the first puzzle. Patrick gave him an earful about knocking him over, said he owed him one. When we said we had been talking about Sally, Greg looked more shaken than I'd seen him since we had entered the house. Sally's disappearance has always affected him acutely, maybe even more than the rest of us. We talked about how things would only get harder and crazier, as if we had known when we were designing it as kids that we'd get this chance, and that it took that much to get our friend back. Then we went over to the stairs and prepared ourselves for the second floor.